Actions. Awesome. Now we've got B Dougie. He's back. Let's roll on.
Let's go back.
B Dougie. Come back. Yeah, he's coming back.
All right, and thanks for the introduction. I am super excited to be giving this talk, but first I'm going to talk about myself, which I am B Dougie. I am the developer advocate here at GitHub, and I'm super honored to be giving the last talk of the night, the evening, the morning, depending on where you're sort of listening from. And it's sort of like Beyoncé closing out Coachella. I'm just going to bring in the heat. So I'm a developer advocate. I'm focused on maintainer happiness, and I just want to go through and explain a couple of the maintainers that I deal with on a regular basis. Now, this is a representation of maintainers out in the wild. And what I know from maintainers and my interaction with maintainers is that they all have different life experiences, a lot of backgrounds, and a lot of reasons for getting into open source software and working on all these cool different projects. So whether they're boilerplates for React, or if there are Python libraries to drop some sick beats, they all have their reasons to get in the code. But one thing that I've learned from my interactions is that they all have experiences where they start working on things that are not writing code. And this talk's really going to be focused on how to get you back to writing code and being efficient as a developer. I did want to talk about real quick about one of my friends, Max Stoiber. He is an open source maintainer, and I have a personal interaction with him where he built a library, which is the React boilerplate, to solve a problem that he needed to be solved. At this time, it was my introduction to React, and I was looking for a project to support a new project at my company, and I needed a way to get into React really quickly. So I, of course, found the React boilerplate, and it sort of got the job done really quickly. I was efficient. I was able to ship a project in less than 6 weeks without knowing any React before then. And funny enough, I was able to learn that story from these YouTube videos of how open source changed Max's life. And I highly recommend you check that out. But the reason behind that was he was looking for another way to be efficient in React as well. So I'm super happy that he open sourced that. I'm super happy that his career has sort of ballooned since then. But that's not the only thing that we've been doing. So we've been GitHub ourselves. We've been shipping features nonstop for as long as we've been around. In the keynote, Nat actually mentioned that the pull request invented by GitHub 12 years ago, roughly 12 years ago. And it came out of a need to build more efficiency around code review and practices around Git. So GitHub has not stopped shipping features. It's actually shown because we've grown to 50 million developers worldwide. So this could be a terrifying number or a super awesome number. But with this number, I'm the advocate and one of the many advocates at GitHub that help support those 50 million developers that support on our platform. So I also wanted to mention that 50 million developers, we also want to ensure that we are the home for all developers. And the way we do that is by shipping features. Now, I know as a GitHub user, you are very aware that GitHub's been shipping lots of features. We've taken a lot of feedback. We have a lot of feedback channels. We have a really awesome support team. And those improvements around automation, collaboration, community, security, of all improvements just to improve your developer workflows. But before I get really into the slides, I want to talk about somebody who really knows about shipping features, and that's Beyoncé. Now, if you aren't familiar with Beyoncé, she is internationally known superstar, which I assume you should know her at this point. And she got her start years ago, just grinding and growing her career. And exactly a week ago, she shipped her latest feature, which is this remix of the Savage song. Now, if you haven't, I can't actually play the song because of copyright reasons. But if you have not heard the song, please, after this talk, after the party, after the end, check it out on TikTok and then give it a star, give it a like, give it a listen on Spotify as well. But I mentioned that because Beyoncé was able to be efficient and ship that from her home as well. So keep in mind that we're all sheltering in place. Beyoncé is also sheltering in place from her home in Houston as well. So with all that being said, as a project maintainer, we want to make sure that we have opportunity to make our jobs easier. Like, we want to know the tools, we want to know the ways to sort of opt in to like the best experience. So without further ado, I would like for us to get into some features. So this talk is a top 10 tips for project maintainers. So let's go ahead and jump in. First one is going to be scheduled reminders. This is a feature that is it's been available for a little bit in a beta, so I highly recommend checking it out if you do have access. If not, please request access. And this is self-evident, I guess, through the name, that you can actually set up a reminder to tell you and your team when the pull request is ready for review. I always explain this feature with whenever I ship code, the first thing I do when I open a pull request is go directly to Slack and paste that PR for everybody to review. And then what happens is no one looks at it, and the next day, on Tuesday, I go back to Slack and ask everybody to look at my PR. And then Wednesday, and then Thursday, and then Friday, I don't ship on Fridays because, it's Friday. So you don't have to go back into Slack all that time, repetitively over and over again. You can actually just go directly to your team's dashboard and actually enable this feature today. You can just provide your Slack integration, make sure you author that, and install the GitHub app, and you have access to that. Multi-line suggested changes, number 9. Now, most people are aware of writing comments in line in PRs, but if you didn't know, now you know, you can actually highlight multiple lines of comments. Not only can you suggest code to be fixed, but you can also accept that code directly in line, as you can see right here. So I'm a bit of a stickler whenever I commit to a project. I don't want to have to try to figure out how to clone, look at a different branch, and then get that code on my system. Like, we do have things like Codespaces, which is in beta today. But before you get access to that, you can actually do this today and commit those changes directly. Number 8, GitHub Actions and GitHub-script. So I was actually part of a project back in March, which was the github-hackathon.com. It was an awesome hackathon. Not only was it a hackathon where we were supporting getting new actions into the ecosystem, we built this actual GitHub hackathon on Actions itself. So meaning that we had a repo that supported the site that you're looking at right now. And every time you submitted a new action, we were actually running actions to validate the actions that you were shipping for the Actions hackathon. Yes, I know. We use GitHub to build GitHub all the time, and we were using Actions to build this as well. And this was the way we were doing our checks too. We were validating with Actions, but then when we needed to review different actions for whether or not they qualified the minimum requirements or could be featured on the homepage, we're using GitHub-script. This is an example of a GitHub-script. So here I've highlighted the code, the 5 lines of code to merge a PR. So if a PR itself that was submitted for the GitHub hackathon was good to go, we'd either label it good or we'd label it featured just to note and do the automation to get that on the front page. So as of today, if you scroll to the bottom, github-hackathon.com, all those actions that are listed on there were powered by GitHub Actions and built for GitHub Actions with GitHub Actions. Number 7, GitHub sponsors and webhooks. So very recently, we shipped a lot of new features for sponsors, including opening up for Mexico. With webhooks and the activity feed, we actually have 2 projects I want to talk about, which one is sponsor functions, which are serverless functions that set up webhooks and get people into your Slack groups. So imagine you want to create a webhook to notify whenever someone is a sponsor to join your Discord, join your Slack. You now have access through the API and webhooks to do that. So sponsor functions is an open source repo. Definitely check it out. One of my friends here at GitHub as well built another action built on the activity feed and API where you can actually identify any issues opened if they are a sponsor. So if you have a sponsor that's opening up issues and you want to address those first because they're helping you out, you might as well help them out. You can actually do that through here. And it goes really with my motto, which is, if you like it, put a label on it. Number 6, save replies. Now, self-explanatory, and a lot of these features, they're named really well. I think naming is very difficult in engineering, but we sort of got that down packed. Save replies, it really is saving replies. So definitely use that today. Number 5, the triage role. Now, we've shipped last summer a couple different roles, one being the maintainer role, the other one being the triage role. And I am a big fan of the triage role. As I mentioned before, I talk to a lot of open source projects, and I let them know about all the features that they're missing out on if I see some gaps in the things that they're using. And one of the best examples I've seen so far is Express.js. I know they've got a mention earlier in an earlier talk, but I want to give another mention, which is their triager guide. Onboarding into open source projects can be daunting and challenging, and they are leveraging the triage role to onboard new contributors. So rather than blindly go to a good first issue and contribute and ship some code and hopefully it works and it passed tests, Instead, onboard through the triage process. So look at issues, label them, review pull requests. One of the best things that you could do as a new developer in any team is to review pull requests and close bugs or open issues, or even label issues. Like all that sort of stuff, the stuff that our maintainers want to get back to do on a regular basis, which is writing code, it tends to be bogged down by things like this. So definitely leverage Triage Role today. Number 4, code search tips. Now, this is not an actual feature, but it is a feature, which I'll talk about in a sec. Last week, I was actually live streaming some code on Twitch, and I went to search for the Axios library, which is a fetch library built in JavaScript. And this is what happened. I Googled for it, and I ended up just getting some random stuff on Google. I was hoping to find this, which is like the actual GitHub repo. My problem was I was not using the proper search feature. So in search, you have these different flags we can actually enable as you're searching. So if I was searching for any repos with the name Axios, I would have found it. Even if I was searching in the README for the term node fetch, because those are mentioned in there in the Axios library, it would have shown up for me. Also, you can also search by stars. So I've been working on SVG animations, and I want to find any projects that have more than 3,000 stars. I'm able to find that. And finally, of course, if you want to check out my Baybot, which is going to be open source soon, you can check out all the forks from 10 to 20 and find my Baybot. And this is an example of me searching. Also want to point out that github.com/search is a viable solution as well. If you just don't know where to start, just use this Omnibar. I'm also going to point out that highlighted in red, there's a link to learn more about those prefixes that I was talking about. Now, I've said a lot, and I'm going to say a lot more. So I'm going to talk about honorable mentions. First up, and I know Maya actually mentioned this, which is two-factor auth. Please enable it. Second one, another owner. Add a second owner to your repository. If you're the only one doing everything and everybody has to go through you, it's going to be a bottleneck. Add a second owner. Also, I'm a big fan of the bus factor. So if you get hit by a bus, at least someone else can take over while you recover. And then also choose a license.com. So if you haven't enabled or added licenses to your open source repository, definitely check that out if you're concerned on which licenses are fit for you. Finally, last honorable mention is the new notifications dashboard and mobile. And everybody's been talking about this today. I'm a big fan. Maybe Ryan doesn't need any more happiness or of all these mentions for his feature. But I do want to mention that this is an awesome feature. I mentioned these together because they influence each other. So I mentioned the github-hackathon.com earlier. I was able to leverage that through pull requests for the GitHub Hackathon at 2 a.m. when I was seeing a lot of the hackathon gets kickstart at 12 a.m. And I was able to merge PRs and label them directly from my phone as I rolled over in the bed. So I'm a big fan of the mobile app. And I also think that this is a hit. All right, so we're rounding the corner. We got the last 3. RFCs for discussions. Now, I know Becca literally just talked right before me about discussions, and I just wanted to shout this out again because I think this is a huge feature. It also was mentioned that RFCs can be hidden in issues and can be overwhelming. And the cool thing about discussions is that you can have them directly in the conversation there. You can get suggested answers. So if you have a lot of questions that come through, you've converted the issue into a discussion, leverage that. Also leverage threaded issues or threaded replies as well. So definitely opt into that, get in the beta, and start using that today. Next, security advisories and CVEs. Again, another thing that's been mentioned all day, but it is a top feature. It's a big deal. GitHub has 50 million developers worldwide. It is our duty to provide features like this for our community. So if you want to start enabling security policies on your repo, definitely check out the security tab, talk to the PM team, talk to support to get your repos enabled today. Not only do you get access to that, but we also have a public database for advisories as well. So if you're concerned about what the details of the advisory is, if your code is affected based on whatever functions or endpoints that you're leveraging, definitely leverage that database. And then again, mentioned earlier, Security Lab. Security Lab is an awesome resource for security researchers to also share information in addition to the database, powered by CodeQL as well. If you aren't aware, you should definitely check it out. And then finally, number 1, create community. Again, I'm following up some of the best speakers all day, which is Becca and Maya. Becca spent the last half of her talk talking about community, but I have a personal experience where my introduction into the Perbot community was through their office hours. They actually had a calendar that I was invited to actually meet the team before I contributed my first line of code. So definitely check that out. And hopefully, as a project maintainer, you've found ways for you to slay like Bay. So that's been the top maintainer tips. Hopefully, if you found that super useful. I just want to give a shout out to the GitHub community forum. If you're interested in finding out more tips, the forum is actually super useful for finding those tips. So get in there, create that community for yourself. Also, giving a shout out to twitch.tv/GitHub. We have another community, which is Next.js. We actually had a conversation with them about good first issues. So I do recommend checking out that video and the future videos. And also, I'm just happy to announce that GitHub has acquired the Yance Hub. Just kidding. This is my source for all Beyoncé information, so I just want to give that shout out. So thank you very much for listening to me. I'm B-Dougie on GitHub. I'm B-Dougie-Yo on Twitter. And slay like Bay. And now over to Nish and Jared.